I will start with these English conversations about Spring Boot annotations. I think it's an important subject for Java development. And today uh, we are going learn about some annotations for Spring framework. Okay, and the first annotation is Spring Boot application. Okay, and anyone can read uh, this paragraph, please.
Alright. As annotation marks the main class. Mhm.
Only read. Okay.
I'm on the cell phone right now, and the letter is too small to see. So sorry about that.
Yeah,
Can can
it's
okay.
just talking about the Spring Boot application annotation that kinds of marks the main class of a Spring application. And this annotation combines other annotations like configuration, enable out configuration, and component scans. And this serves as an entry point to the Spring application itself. It's how the Spring application starts.
Okay, and the other persons can explain a little about this annotation, please.
I don't know much about this annotation. I, it's used a lot in every Spring context, but I never really go in deep to know what does it means. I just know that it starts application. It's written on public void main static, so public static void main, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's more about these three annotations that are behind the actual Spring application annotation. Because, like, if you think about the component scan annotation, it just tells Spring that it has to look into all the files and classes that are inside of this package. So if you have like a component annotation or a service annotation or a controller annotation, if it's inside the same package or the underlying packages of this one, it just tells the Spring, hey, you have to look into all these classes to figure out if you have to like look for a bean to be created or look for a configuration or this kind of thing. I think that's the
Okay. I will try to explain about these annotations. In my opinion, I think it's annotations with the responsibilities to start the applications in Java. Okay, with Spring Boot. Okay, and when you are development some projects with Java and Spring Boot, I think it's very common to use these annotations. I think is one of the most important annotations for uh, Java developments with Spring. Okay, and the other people can can explain about these annotations or have some questions.
Yeah, I'm seeing that education, and there's another one that I really don't know how to say its name that joined the meeting. So, do you guys know a bit about this annotation or have any questions?
Okay. Any questions about this annotation?
Don't think.
Okay. And the next annotations uh, is controller. Okay. Uh, Anyone can read this paragraph,
Yeah,
please?
I can read now. I'm on the note.
Oh, you joined with your laptop. Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, That's controller. So identify as a class as Spring MVC controller. This annotation handles HTTP requests responding with the appropriate viewer data. It plays a crucial role in the web request processing.
Okay. Can give me a example about this annotation, please?
Sure. When you want to do a servlet, let's see the way the Spring implements the servlet 4.0. So these annotations makes your interface to the internet. So it can handle the HTTP requests that servlets did.
Nice.
Okay. Welcome, Ramon, Eddie Claysons. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, are you listening to me? Is my mic okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
can hear you.
Okay. So nice to meet you guys. I'm Ramon. I am 22 and I am currently an intern in a company. Its main objective is to deliver software to hospitals, and I'm currently working in a scheduling software. So I used to work with Java, and I really like the bundle that involves Java, like Spring, Hibernate, even though I didn't work with it a lot. But nowadays, I'm currently working with JavaScript, actually with TypeScript and React. So I'm not quite familiar with these concepts. As I see you're studying Spring, I have never worked with it, but that's it.
But Ramon, I'm gonna tell you something. These concepts may be like this specific connotation may be for Spring, but if you look at other languages and frameworks like Next.js, which is JavaScript, right?
Yeah.
Fast API, which is a framework from Python, they also have the at controller annotation, and the concept is the same. It's just like Vinicius was saying, I think before you joined it, that it's like the place where we create methods that will handle the incoming requests, like HTTP requests and this kind of things. So, like the concepts can be applied to other frameworks and languages. So that's what's great about that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can see how technology can be flexible in this way. Like a lot of concepts could be used in several languages, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why I don't see any trouble me being here, even though I don't work with Java and these frameworks and etc. So that's why I'm here. Even though it's being spoken in a specific language, I think I can apply it in a language that I'm currently using, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And I think that even if we are talking about Spring and Java, I think the main focus here is also improving our English and talking about technology, right? So it's all good.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess that's it. It's my first time here, so
Nice.
Uh, okay.
Welcome.
Welcome to this is English conversations and welcome this Java community. Okay, and about these conversations, uh, it's uh, it's opportunities to learn about some annotations for Spring Framework. Okay, and the next annotation is REST controller. Okay, and anyone can read, please.
Go ahead, Ramon. It's your turn.
okay. Hand pick it. Okay. So REST controller is similar to controller. This annotation is specifically designed for RESTful web services. Combining add controller and add response body, it simplifies the development of RESTful APIs by automatically converting methods, return values to JSON or HTML. Oops, XML actually.
Excellent.
Okay, and can he explain about this annotation, please?
Mm. I think I can try. So, like we were talking about, the requests, the incoming requests are all kind of HTTP when we are talking about this. But before, like years ago, when we didn't have front end frameworks like Angular, Vue, or React or any other, we had some kind of server side rendering that was responsible for actually creating the HTML, the components, and everything. So we didn't really have it on the front end side on the browser being rendered and everything. So this is what the controller and REST controller is about. So before, when we had to like load a page, we would be calling a controller, and this controller would be returning a view. And this concept of view, it's basically like a page, an HTML page. But then, like with the evolution of how we develop software, we split the responsibilities from like the front end and the back end. So mostly, most of the time in newer applications, enterprise level applications, we don't really use the app controller annotation anymore because we leave like these pages and views to be handled and managed by some other kind of framework like a SPA framework or something. And then the responsibility of our backends focus mainly on like receiving, processing, and providing data. So this REST controller tells Spring that, hey, these endpoints that we are creating, they are just going to receive and send data. And this data, usually it's JSON data, so a JSON object with date and this kind of thing. But it can also be XML, but depends. So I think this is the main difference between like controller and REST controller. Sure if
Okay, and
Yeah, that's a good point. In add controller, you have to implement some template engine like time live and return a model and view. But
which is not
I
commonly used anymore, right? Like
in
JSP.
in in smaller applications, I think I use a lot, but
Hmm. Mhm.
in bigger companies is not so common.
and
Yeah.
the what's the difference between REST controller and the controller?
Yeah, I think that's
Behavior.
mainly what Vinicius was saying, right? Like controller usually returns a string, plain string, but this string is not returned to whoever is calling it. This string looks into like our static resource folder for like a HTML page that represents that a JSP page, and then we return this page and the browser is responsible for like rendering it. But with the REST controller is different. We just return the data, which can be an object represented in JSON, right? Or something like that.
Okay. Uh, I'm thinking the difference between controller and REST controller is controller it's returning a string and the REST controller
Mhm.
objects with JSON.
Mhm.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. And the next annotation is request mapping. Anyone can read, please?
Before we start this discussion about request mapping, I'm not quite sure I got the concept of REST controller. Just to be sure, like when we use the REST controller, we expect to return the content itself, like the data we're trying to render, and when we're trying and when we're using the controller one, we're trying to like the return is the name, for example, the name of the file that contains the return that will return the data we are expecting to render. Is that it? Like we're adding like a layer, or I didn't get the idea
Yeah,
right.
yeah. The controller, in fact, like Renato was saying, it does return a string, but it doesn't return to the client that is calling. It just returns it to the Spring framework. And then the Spring frameworks take this string and find a template that it's inside the resource folder. And then it returns the template, an HTML page, like your main page, your dashboard, your detail screen. So it's actually the front end being handled by the back end, right? We don't handle it in sorry, we don't have a framework in the front end like Angular or anything. Who handles it? It's some kind of library in the backend. That's what
Okay.
the controller do. And the REST controller, it's just the HTTP request that we are used to. Like the response will be just a JSON with the data, and then who will handle this data? Front end, the framework that it's working.
Okay, so the REST one doesn't go through the Spring layer. Like it
It
doesn't
goes
communicate.
there, but it converts the object that you are returning, like I don't know, a user. You have an endpoint that fetches the user data. So you have a user object, and the REST controller will return this user object, but it's in a JSON. It serializes this object and sends only the data.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
The
Okay.
string that at controller returns is the name of the page that you want to see, you know? More commonly,
Yeah.
it's the name of the page, the template.
Okay.
Okay. And about this annotation, request mapping.
Vinicius?
Okay, let's go. Um, at request mapping, this annotation maps HTTP requests to handle methods with a controller. It specifies the URL pattern to handle oh shit, to handle and the methods to execute it, providing a powerful way to define the handling logic.
Okay.
So
Uh,
this
welcome.
annotation,
Oh, sorry. Welcome. I think is the nickname Bolinha. Okay. Could you introduce yourself, please?
little ball in this case.
Little ball.
Little ball. Little ball.
I think
Okay.
he's on
Can you
his
hear me?
phone, so probably
Okay.
mic isn't working.
You can send your messages on chat. Okay. Uh, and anyone can explain a little about this annotation, please.
Gonna start, Vinicius?
Okay. I think the annotation already tells what it does, so it's very clear. It just take to receive the name of the path you want to pass in the browser, you know. So when you do something like localhost uh, slash user, your request mapping receive a receive a string that slash user is the same as your browser. So it tells the Spring where to see when receive this request.
Mhm.
So this is
Okay.
the notation that saved us from the struts XML file where we needed to map it manually, or is it something
Uh,
else?
you say that you work with JavaScript, so I'm not sure if you are familiar with like Express, right?
No, I'm quite new actually. Like I've been working
Ah, right. Mhm.
for like 2 months, so I'm actually just like fixing bugs.
It's just no worries. I think it's just like if you have many apps, many endpoints, so like slash user, slash order, slash uh, transaction. I don't know. You have many endpoints, right? So this annotation is responsible for like when a request gets in, like, oh, the request is slash transaction. This annotation tells Spring, hey, if you get a slash transaction request, this is the class that you have to send it to. It's basically
Okay.
like Vinicius was saying, like mapping the requests to the actual class that needs to be executed.
Okay, yeah, so that's quite similar with the struts XML file. Like it's a very old technology. Like it's been replaced. Like Spring replaced it, but like I studied it a little bit, and it seemed like it replaces. I don't know if you're aware of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, in fact, Ramon, Spring has this annotation approach. It's a new thing. In the last
Mhm.
years, it's been used like, I don't know, 6, 10 years, maybe, yeah, maybe 8 years or something. Before that, Spring actually used XML for like mapping this endpoints and creating beans and everything. This is annotation based pattern. It's a new thing on Spring, new in
Mhm.
quotes.
Ah, that's cool. Even when it was like on a file, it was automatically made, or we needed to like input the information manually on the
Yeah,
file.
yeah, you had to add it manually, like telling exactly like slash transaction must
Mhm.
go to the transaction controller class into this method or something. So yeah, you had to do it manually.
Kind of a bummer, but okay. Thank you.
Okay. And the next annotation is auto write. Uh, anyone can read, please?
Right, I'm gonna just read and then some of you guys explain it. So use it for automatic dependency injection. AutoWord reduces the need for manual bean wiring, whether applied to a constructor, field, or method. It signals that Spring should inject the required dependency, promoting cleaner and more maintainable code.
Okay. And about this annotation, I think it's very important for uh, inject dependencies. Okay. I think, for example, if I have a services, for example, I can use these annotations with injecting dependencies, okay, for my service.
Sure.
Mhm.
But I think this annotation is not so used because the good practice says that you want to inject your dependencies through constructor. So you don't need this dependency anymore because you don't inject your dependence, but you uh oh I don't remember the you invert the control of the dependence. Bring the injects for you in the in the constructor of the class.
Okay, and the other person can explain, please.
I think that's it. Uh, it People say that it's cleaner to actually create the class constructor and add it as a parameter, and then Spring can figure out how to inject it. It's cleaner and it's explicitly showing what's happening. So yeah, people try to avoid auto edit.
I believe it's not necessary to implementations constructors because these annotations uh, it's not necessary to have a constructors. Okay.
Its only objective is to like make us not create instantiate the object. Like it only like the only objective of it is like making us. Oh my god, I'm so confused that I can't even talk. Like the only goal. I don't know what word to use, but anyways, like is to like avoid the writing process. Like
I
just
think
it.
yeah, I think you need to get some experience in practice to actually feel why this is like a good thing. But
Okay.
basically, it's like we don't have to create objects anymore. So you don't use like new service, new transaction service. You don't have to
Mhm.
create it everywhere you need to use it.
Yeah.
Like these newer frameworks, like Java frameworks, JavaScript frameworks, any language framework, they have this concept of like dependency injection. So what they do is like they create the object for you. So if you have like a user service, framework will behind the scenes create it with like new user service,
Mhm.
and it will get this object and store it in like a container in a bucket. Imagine a
Yeah.
bucket where all these objects get created and left there. So any place in your application that you need to use any of these objects, you don't have to create a new one. There is one that it's kind of global in your application. This is
Yeah.
the case. So it's global and all the configurations are already set on this object.
Mhm.
So you just have to inject it. So that's what it's this kind of dependency injection
Yeah, I'm
about.
aware of it. But like, is there other way to do it with like without using AutoWire? Because you're all saying that it's replaceable, like you don't need to use it. But like, if you don't use it, how else would you
Yeah,
inject?
the framework figures out if you have like a constructor on your class that expects this class that you want to inject as a parameter. So like you are talking about the user controller, for example, and the user controller will use the user service, right? So you create
Mhm.
a constructor of the controller class that expects a user service as a parameter. And what happens? What happens when Spring? So this controller is also managed by Spring. So Spring will do like the new user controller constructor, and it will see like, hey, I need a user service as a parameter, and then he will look into that bucket and see, oh, I do have a user service object. So I will just inject in this constructor and get a user controller. That's how it's kind of done behind the scenes.
Okay, cool.
Excellent
Thank you.
explanation.
Okay. And the next annotations is services. Okay. And can read, please.
Go
What
ahead, Ramon
service?
Go
or
ahead.
Vinicius.
Sorry, go ahead, Ramon.
Yeah, that's just
No, you can go like there's no problem. Go for it.
Oh, what service? Marking a class as a service, this annotation is typically used for encapsulating business logic. It aids in component in scanning and code organization, helping to structure an application with a dedicated service layer.
Okay.
As we can see in the text, it encourages you to use the any layer application or MVC structure. So all the business logic, your not the object logic, but the application logic is put in inside this class and is defined as a service to inject on the other classes want to use this logic. In the with the auto-wired annotation or as in the parameter in the constructor.
Okay. Sorry. And the and about these annotations services. Anyone can explain a little about service, please?
repository. So, identified as a Spring Data repository, this annotation allows a class to interact with a data source, handling database operations and exception translation. It simplifies the data access in a Spring application. So, yeah, this class and this concept, it's more about like the responsibility of each of these classes. If we think like controllers, services, and repositories, they are all just objects managed by the framework you are working, right? But they have different responsibilities. So the controller is responsible for incoming requests, so getting slash user slash transaction and this kind of thing. And like Vinicius said, the service is where we actually develop the business logic. So like I want to register a user. Inside the service, I will do like the user validation. Does this user already exist? Or is it a new user or this kind of thing? And then this user service usually calls the repository. And the repository is an object that contains methods that can access your data source. I'm calling it data source because it can be a SQL database, a NoSQL database, a key value storage, a S3 bucket, or anything. So it's a repository. Usually, it's a SQL database. So this is the responsibility of this class. And usually, when we talk about Spring Data, as is on the description, we usually talk about ORMs, which is object relational mapping. So we kind of try to map objects from our program, like a user class, to an actual table in the database. So when we do that, this repository class is able to actually convert changes in your object to actually SQL queries that get executed on the database, reflecting the changes that you made to the object itself.
Okay. Anyone
Great.
can you read? Can you explain?
Oh, I think Murilo have already explained everything. Thank you for that, man.
Okay. I think it's very important is annotations for Spring framework because these annotations uh, there is interacts with database. Okay, I think it's annotations when uh, I have I interactions with databases, and it's common to use these annotations. And the other annotation is configuration. Okay, can read anyone?
Okay, so
Go ahead.
configuration.
It's-
Oh, I'm sorry.
You are too quiet, so go ahead. It's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Designating a class as a configuration class, this annotation defines application beans, replacing XML configuration with Java-based configuration. It plays a crucial role in configuring the Spring application context.
Okay, and what do you think about these annotations?
Your turn, Vinicius.
Okay. This this annotation tells Springs that this class annotated with configuration uh, is supposed to be read first than the others because they might need the the things that this class has. So when Spring Boots, the configuration is written read. Uh, sorry, my English teacher is written first to configure the rest of the application.
Okay, and
Mhm.
the next annotation is component. Anyone can read, please?
Serving as a generic stereotype annotation for any Spring managed component. Add component marks a class as such, allowing it to be automatically detected and configured by Spring. It simplifies the process of declaring and managing Spring components.
Okay, can I explain about this annotation, please?
I think this is the base annotation that it's it's like it's saying it's the generic annotation. So it's talking about beans. Ramon, you don't have Spring background. Beans are just these objects that get into the bucket I was telling early. So beans are just these objects that are managed by Spring. So when you want to create a class, it must be a component. So when you annotate a class with add component, you are telling Spring, hey, look at this class. I want you to create an object of this class and put it in the bucket so it can be used later. And the other annotations that we just saw, add controller, add service, and add repository, actually behind the scenes, they extend the add component annotation. So they're all just components. And what is a component? Just an object in this bucket that gets managed by the framework. So you don't really need to use like add controller, add repository, add service everywhere. You can actually just create an object that you want to use in another place. Like I think we discussed it in a meeting yesterday or before yesterday about like validation classes. So if I want a user validator class and I want to validate users in many places in my application, I actually can create this class, this user validator, and use this annotation add component to tell Spring, hey, I will use this user validator in many places, but I just want one object of it. I don't want to keep creating objects everywhere in my project. New user validator. I don't want that. So I'm annotating it with add component and tell Spring, hey, create this object, put it in your bucket, and use it everywhere I call it, everywhere I inject it. So it's kind of a generic annotation that creates objects for you.
Okay. And the next annotation is value. Anyone can raise, please?
At value. This annotation injects values from properties, files, or environment variables into fields. Provide a clean and concise way to handle external configuration. It simplifies the retrieval of configuration values within the application. So if your field in your class is annotated with at value and use the right spell, you can read this value from the environment variables or properties. From the files, I never use it, but it's possible to. And that's
Not
it.
sure. Is it possible to read from files? I never use it
I
like
never
this.
use it too.
Yeah.
Properties and environments are more common.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay, guys. Uh, Thanks
Hello, my friend.
for participating these English conversations. Okay, and today uh, was opportunities to learning about Spring annotations.